Ever wondered why a continent rich in resources struggles to flourish? Today, we unravel a compelling tale of Africa's potential and the hurdles it faces. Why does the West's involvement lead to deprivation and famine? How does Africa, the major importer of essentials, cope with sanctions? Join us as we probe into this web of international relations, questioning the actions that leave a continent in crisis. Hello and welcome, I'm your host Piyush. Let's begin with the video report. Here's a concerning international development. Reports from Moscow indicate that Western countries have failed to release Russian fertilizer meant for impoverished African nations, marking a disturbing turn of events. The Russian Foreign Ministry revealed that over 96,000 tons of humanitarian aid are currently stranded in EU ports. As part of the Russia-UN memorandum on September 7, 2022, Russia took the initiative to send 262,000 tons of mineral fertilizers blocked in the ports of Latvia, Estonia, Belgium, and the Netherlands as humanitarian aid to the poorest countries. Since then, however, only 2 deliveries have been completed, the ministry stated, referring to a shipment of 20,000 tons to Malawi and a subsequent delivery of 34,000 tons to Kenya. The release of 3 other planned shipments to Nigeria, 34,000 tons, Zimbabwe, 23,000 tons, and Sri Lanka, 55,000 tons, has been stalled despite the fact that all preparatory procedures have been completed, it added. The Russian Foreign Ministry condemned this situation as another instance of Western hypocrisy. Although the EU claims that sanctions don't apply to Russian humanitarian aid, they continue to obstruct these free deliveries, creating obstacles for Russian exporters. The ministry labeled the blockade of Russian produce in EU ports as illegal and has called on the bloc's authorities to release the stranded shipments immediately. This situation raises questions about the ethical implications of withholding humanitarian aid. Why are these essential supplies being blocked, and how will this impact the already vulnerable African nations waiting for assistance? These are pressing concerns that demand urgent answers. A collective voice echoed from the Kremlin to the United Nations as Russian and 7 African leaders made a joint appeal on Friday. They urged the UN to intervene, demanding immediate action to release 200,000 tons of Russian fertilizer stranded in European seaports. In a published statement, the presidents of Comoros, Congo, Egypt, Russia, Senegal, South Africa, Uganda, and Zambia emphasized specific measures to remove barriers hindering Russian grain and fertilizer exports. Their plea called for the swift implementation of the UN Secretary General's Black Sea Package initiative endorsed in Istanbul on July 22, 2022. This united call emphasizes the urgency of facilitating free delivery of these essential resources to African nations. But why is the EU doing this? Here's the story. Africa heavily depends on Russia and Ukraine for vital wheat and fertilizers. West Africa in particular is grappling with severe food scarcity due to blocked exports. Now, what's perplexing is that despite claiming that sanctions don't apply to humanitarian aid, they are halting essential supplies to Africa, raising questions about their true intentions. Indeed, it's a puzzling situation. The EU and the West aiming to punish Russia find Africa caught in the crossfire. Africa, historically anti-West, resists EU's pressures, leading to a standoff. The EU attempts to shift blame, suggesting Africa blame Putin and cooperate for increased production. But Africa's loyalty to Russia prevails, leaving the EU's motives in the spotlight. The consequences are dire. Africa faces acute food and fertilizer shortages, jeopardizing next year's harvest. The EU's persistent actions raise eyebrows. Is it genuinely aiding Africa or pursuing a different agenda? The irony lies in EU's accusations against Russia while potentially imposing a crisis themselves. It's a situation filled with contradictions. Africa's struggle intensifies while political games play out. The question remains, who holds the key to resolving Africa's crisis?